This is JD Simo. He's one of the most sought-after session guitar players in Nashville. He's recorded with artists like Beyoncé Knowles, Jack White, Tommy Emmanuel, Dolly Parton, Stevie Nicks, and he even played all the guitar parts on the latest Elvis movie. In this episode of Playback, JD breaks down the biggest mistakes that players make and how to fix them. Including why most players overcomplicate tone and what really matters. The techniques almost everyone skips when learning slide guitar, and how JD rebuilt his feel from scratch. By the way, I'm Spencer from Sonora Guitar Intensive, and this is a brand new channel that we're building in partnership with our friends at Carter Vintage Guitars here in Nashville, Tennessee. We're trying to create the kind of music content that we wish existed.
Every time I sit down, I want to make a hit.
Real conversations with world-class musicians, talking about stuff that usually gets left out.
That's when you start getting to the nitty-gritty of things, you know.
And honestly, we're figuring this out as we go. Every comment, every like, every subscribe tells the YouTube algorithm that this is something that's worth showing to more people. And with that, let's get into it. This is Playback.
So actually, before getting into slide, what were you doing before that? Because you were playing professionally before getting into slide, right?
Yeah, a long time. I was 4 years old and I saw Elvis on television. One of my older sisters was a big Saturday Night Live fan, so I saw the Blues Brothers, and so like Steve Cropper in particular was like, I was like really taken. And when you're 4 years old, I mean, like everything's a superhero or something, right? So I was really taken with both, and my parents were nice enough to get me a guitar, and I started playing. Growing up in Chicago, I had access to WXRT, which still exists, which was like an amazing radio station. So it's like, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was listening to, Elvis Costello or Tom Waits or, Tom Petty or Bob Dylan or whatever. And then also the music of that time period in the early 90s of, Nirvana and like Sonic Youth and all that. So like there was a really good music on the radio that I was very exposed to. And then there was also the Lincoln Park Public Library, which had like every record ever made.
I thought you were going to reference the Lincoln Park record. I'm like, oh yeah, OG. It was classic. Yeah.
No, but it was really like, it was incredible to go there and sift through records and then also music documentaries. And they also had like the old Ed Sullivan shows. And there was a series on UPN when I was like 6 or 7 years old called The History of Rock and Roll, and it was like a 20-part series. And I rented that constantly, and it was such a wonderful way to like get into it because, I'd watch an episode on Motown and then I'd go, check out like, a stack of records of Motown like there was the whole folk thing where it was like Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and stuff, but then also learning about Michael Bloomfield and like it was incredible to have access where it's like, had I grown up in Des Moines, Iowa, I wouldn't have had that kind of access, So it was a great place to grow up. But I was playing in bars and stuff like 8, 9 years old.
Wow.
My parents would.
Were your parents players?
No, not at all.
You just got obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And did you have a mentor that kind of took you under their wing?
Not then. Later, there were many mentors, but at that time, I was just a young kid that was really obsessed with it and loved it, and just in the bedroom with the record player, and which is a connection, which is something that is strange now, because like I was born in '85, so I'm technically a millennial, even though I feel more connected to sort of Gen X in a way, because like we didn't have computers. Like I didn't have a computer until I was like in high school, and I learned with records and stuff like that. So it's like the way I learned to play music was exactly the same as every generation before me. Whereas now the way people access information and learn, it's different, and it's in some ways less auditory and more visual, and that's not necessarily a good thing when it comes to like nuance, because like I remember like one of the first things I ever learned to play was Elvis's Heartbreak Hotel, and like most people would play it like which is incorrect. And I remember like sitting there going, it doesn't sound right, and then I finally stumbled upon that the last he's bending an E flat as the end of the solo. And it's like little nuanced things like that are auditory, you know, like and when you stack hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of those little nuanced things, like it makes a difference, I think, you know.
And when did you decide to move here? Like, tell us about that.
So my family relocated to Phoenix when I was a teenager, and I wanted to get out. And so I started, like, I dropped out of high school when I was 15 and went out and played music full time. And after years of touring all over the country as either a sideman or like groups that I was like trying to like make work that were mine, or ones I was at least like had ownership of in some way, I was like, I gotta move somewhere, you know. And so my best friend to this day is a guy named Zach Childs, who has a YouTube channel and called Ask Zach, and I knew him, and he was like, you should try Nashville. And so I came here because of him.
Wow.
And
After touring a bunch.
Yeah, and I was just about to turn 21 when that happened.
When did you start getting interested in slide in particular?
Oh man, like very quickly, but like I was barely a teenager and I was obsessed with it, but I was terrible. I sucked at it, terrible. So I was very discouraged. I would like every year be like, okay, this is the year, and then quit after a week or two because it was just so hard and sounded so bad.
Do you remember the moment when you decided to get into it? Like, was there a performance or something like that in particular that drew you to it?
Not in particular. I mean, you know, what eventually got me really into it was just really falling in love with Duane Allman. Not even necessarily like the Allman Brothers, but like, you know, the anthologies of where he was a session player in Muscle Shoals, just like the whole scope of his thing and how he learned from a guy named Jesse Ed Davis, who played with Taj Mahal and later with Jackson Browne and stuff. Like, that was like Duane's inspiration. And so all that, like getting obsessed with that is what like really kind of led to wanting to get into it.
Mm-hmm. So. And what was your trajectory through it? Like, how did you, sounds like the entry point was Duane Allman, but then, what was your exploration like?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, you're just trying to, you know, like I was in a club. So fast forward, I'm in a club band here in Nashville called the Don Kelly Band, which we played like crazy bluegrass and Western swing stuff, and very notable band, Brent Mason and my friend Guthrie Trapp and Kenny Vaughn and a whole host of others, Red Volkart.
Yeah.
And so I was in that band, and that's when I decided, okay, I'm really going to do this, which was, in retrospect, somewhat foolish, because like I was already being highly judged at my abilities just trying to get through the material, and then like deciding I was going to play slide guitar meant that I was going to just look horrible for months and months and months. But you know, I give Don credit. Like Don understood that if I was going to get good at it, I had to be terrible, because you have to crawl before you can walk. In anything, you have to. It's the reality of you're gonna suck until you don't suck. You know, hopefully. And
he was willing to be patient with you as you.
He was, but he also like understood. He was like, figure out how to make it decent. So like, what I tell people, what worked for me was like, the hardest things on slide are to get the outside strings to ring. Okay, so like the high E. Just to do that is probably the hardest thing. And same thing on the low.
Why do you think it's the hardest?
Because your precision has to be really, really right.
In terms of like tension on the string.
As far as your feel for the bar, because you have no, because your only contact point is that string.
I see.
Your any bit of I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna ring.
I see. Yep.
So what I tell people is focus on the middle two strings first. Focus on the G string and the D string, because those are going to be your easiest in the very beginning. Okay, and then sort of fan out from there. So if you're thinking it, like I always play in standard tuning, which not everybody does. And
that's
it is
unusual.
harder.
Yeah.
But my whole thing was I wanted to at any point pick it out of my pocket and be able to use it. And I didn't want to relearn the instrument in an open tuning like Derek Trucks or something. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So if you think in triads, your A triad, C, D, E, F, F sharp, G, whatever.
Yep.
Use those as your home bases. Like that's kind of a good place to sort of start. So you can make, like if you're playing something simplistic, you can make something work in that. And then as time goes on, fan out. But I do remember like for months and months and months and months and months and months, like trying to get something like that going on, and it just being horrible, and then all of a sudden I could do it. And there's no rhyme or reason, it's just all of a sudden you can do it. And you just have to persevere through until.
Were there exercises or something that?
I mean, I would just sit there and try and play it. And
Yeah.
like there's one good exercise is just to try and play what you would play with your fingers. So like.
Yeah.
So burn down. Like try and play what your fingers are doing, and so I would sit there mostly and try and do that, and then it just
Yeah.
and then you get as things go on, then it's like playing up high is really hard. But it's like you keep building, like you need a firm foundation to build the harder stuff on. So it's like I would say start, which is what I did, and slowly fanned out. But Dwayne was the way in because Dwayne's style is very much mimicking a harmonica. So, I'm playing, there's a little bit, there's some of that's me, that doesn't sound like Dwayne, but because I've sort of, I'll talk about it in a minute. I sort of got to a point where I was just like, I don't want to sound like Dwayne at all. So it's like I've let go of a lot of it. But the point is most of the time he's tuned to an open E, so it's even easier because you're just working off one fret, whereas I'm having to jump around. I'm having to jump around to sort of do something that you would just do on one fret if you were tuned to open E. But it's a good way in,
You said he also played in standard?
He did on Dreams and a song called Mountain Jam that they would play. And so that is more kind of, just a Dreams. That one move in particular is very helpful, which ties to some pedal steel stuff later that I'll talk about. Is just this, because when you're first playing slide, like you're really kind of rigid because because you're used to playing with your fingers and you're used to vibratoing this way.
Yeah.
So it's like to not. First and foremost, you're trying to hit pitch. So trying to do pitch and then add vibrato on it is a bitch because it's not a natural feeling. And I'll go back. So a good exercise for pitch is just to fret a note and do it with the slide. Just chromatics.
And are you mostly visual with that? Like, are you looking at the fret and being like, I need to line up with that, or are you trying to mostly operate from
It's
the
both.
sound?
It's both, and you definitely need like your tonal center with your ear. It's just like playing fiddle or obviously pedal steel or something where you don't have, where it but doing chromatics in particular, like is really important and very helpful. So to go back to where I was, like getting to a point where you're hitting your tonal center and your vibrato is decent, getting to a point where you're loose and not so rigid but you have to do all these other things before you get to that point, because otherwise you're just going to be loosey-goosey and your pitch is going to be terrible and your vibrato is going to be too wide. But it's like, where it's like I'm both precise but also loose. And that's like in Dreams, Dwayne doing that, and he does that as like a triad.
Oh, wow.
And then he goes up here and he goes.
And you're not muting behind the slide.
I'm not there. Because I want the harmonics to ring. If I want harmonics to ring, I'm not going to dampen. But if I want it to be very distinct, like there I'm dampening because I want the fundamental note.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing like, I want harmonics behind the bar. So it's something I don't think about so much now.
Sure.
But
it's
that's
ingrained.
the other part, is that, like, again, in the beginning, don't worry about nuance so much because you're trying to just fret a note. So it's like dampen and then add some vibrato to it.
And
anyway,
in your right hand, sorry to get in. I mean, we're getting into the technique now.
No.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize that you were also palming a pick at that.
Yeah, because I play both with my hands and with a pick, and so I rarely play slide with a pick, but it's just natural because I'm always going back and forth.
Yeah.
So it's just there.
And you palm it in this crease. Yeah. Okay.
Just right there.
Interesting. And then you're controlling a lot of the muting in that right hand as well.
Correct. Any note you don't want to ring.
You're sort of, is it palm or is it fingers?
It's both. Your palm, and I have really big hands, so it's like the palm helps a lot because you can, especially for lower strings, I can pretty much cover everything with the side of my thumb and with my palm. Where I'm holding my high E string with my index finger, and I'm literally covering the rest. And if I move over, I keep moving over.
And you're not muting the top strings. Oh, your knuckles are grabbing the top strings.
Yeah. So it's just, it moves around. It just depends on which notes I want to ring. There I'm literally holding everything down except for the high E string.
Yeah, so there's a lot of subtlety in, and a sort of dance is happening in the right hand to keep everything kind of contained. Yeah, it's a real bitch.
It's a bitch.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, that's super cool. So you enter into slide guitar through Dwayne Allman, and then what happens? Like, where do your influences go from there?
Well, so yeah, I get to a certain place where I'm pretty comfortable. Where I'm making music and it's not like it's becoming less and less of a struggle. And this is like age 25 to like 27, 28. Okay, so for a few years I'm really deep in that rabbit hole. But
specifically when you're playing with Don's band.
Correct. And as I'm like leaving his band and starting to make records on my own and starting to play on other people's as well. And but I was very much like in that zone. And then I reached a certain point where, there's so much, like, especially with slide guitar, as we were talking about off camera, like, much like the ever huge presence of someone like Stevie Ray Vaughan or the ever presence of Jimi Hendrix or something, or Led Zeppelin or whatever, these things that just permeate our existence, and there's so much sort of replication of them going on. I sort of reached a point where I was just like, I want to move away from it because I wasn't as inspired. Like the initial spark to get me into it was there, but then it's like to try and do something with it. It's like there's a brick wall there because it's like it's so much like so much other things that exist and have existed, including the original, right? So I was sort of stuck in a sort of rut for a while, sort of trying to find inspiration of like something to do with slide, and that's where like Earl Hooker, a guy from Chicago named Earl Hooker, came into play because I'd heard his name and I'd had his records, but it never like hit me. But it like hit me in my late 20s because he was playing. First of all, he's playing standard tuning, and he's playing really clean, so he's not playing like distorted slide, okay? But it's still blues idiom type stuff, but he's playing more chromatics. That kind of thing where he's playing some chromatics. That kind of stuff, and so it appealed to me because it was different enough from other stuff, especially like in the blues world, like because he didn't taking cues from harmonica.
And cues from singers.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. And then his mentor was a guy named Robert Nighthawk, who essentially played the exact same way, but with a distorted tone. But it's very much that sort of. But really, sort of like the way they both spell out the major third there.
Yeah, sort of that like enclosure thing.
Yeah, where it's like it introduced the idea of chromatics into slide playing for me, which had not really occurred to me, other than like hearing lyrical like George Harrison, like like from Isn't It a Pity? Or whatever it is. But that kind of thought process. So like those two things were like really influential to me in sort of fanning out. And then from there, I love country music a lot. And so steel players, like there's a blues steel player named Hop Wilson who was from Texas that is kind of an under the radar guy that is a really fun rabbit hole to go down. And he actually played pedal steel but played blues. So he would go. So it would be even more spelled out. Okay? So. That kind of stuff where it's like really spelled out and clean. And Ralph Mooney, who played steel with everyone, but like famously like Rainy Day Woman with Waylon Jennings and stuff, that whole concept of the that sort of looseness.
Are you referring to the legato kind of thing?
Yes, exactly. And also, like with steel, most of the time guitar players, if you notice, they'll start in a register, whether they start high or medium or low on the neck, and they will gradually work higher or they will gradually work down. Like there's a very linear sense to the way guitar players phrase when they're improvising. Steel players will jump large, huge things from very low to very high, and then go right back. Like so, there's a phrasing thing there that is so like if I'm. like where just getting used to jumping, which is totally a steel thing because that's not a guitar centric sort of idea.
Is that built into the mechanic of a lap steel?
I don't think so.
Like an octave button?
I think it's just that. I think it's just a thing that happened over time. That if you just notice, whether you're talking about early non-pedal, so like guys like Don Helms who played with Hank Williams, or Speedy West who played with Jimmy Bryant, like their ability to go very low to very high for like almost comedic effect or something like that, and that just transferred over to the way that people phrase on the instrument.
And you said the person you mentioned was Hop
Wilson was one.
Oh,
it's Earl Hooker and Nighthawk were like the first big ones, which are like Chicago guys, and then Hop is from Texas, and like that was somebody I got exposed to that was like a big influence. And then there's like the country influence of like Ralph Mooney. There's other steel players too, but like I just love Ralph Mooney's playing. And then of course, you know, I haven't mentioned up to this point, but it's like through this whole time, love of Ry Cooder and of David Lindley, that was always there, but it was not like, I sort of avoided, after I'd gone so deep down the Duane Allman rabbit hole, I was like intent to not like totally go down a complete rabbit hole of a specific stylist, especially one living. Because I didn't want because it was a concerted effort to like keep the influence of what I learned from Duane and all that, which was all good, but like try and shed the things that were so specifically him, and like leave those for him and try and find a different way. And again, this is all very like ethereal and so like really nitpicky. And at the end of the day, I think it's impossible for one to truly like listen to their own playing and truly hear it for what it truly is. So like, you know, these are all like internal, this is me and the committee in my head having conversations at 3:00 in the morning.
Totally.
This is not like, don't take
I think
all this with a grain of salt.
I think you're speaking to something innate about like the development and excavating of a personal voice, which is this process of like, okay, I'm going to emulate this person for 5 years until I really get inside their style, and then I'm going to try to ditch all of it until I like discover that there was something more me, you know.
Or hopefully there's other things you pick from other places that fill in the gap, you know. And so like I love Ry Cooder, but I've never gone through. I've purposely tried to not sit and actually really try and sound like him. But I've listened to him a lot, and he's a huge influence.
What do you think makes his style tick? Like how is it contrasted against the things that we've talked about so far?
He is the thing that strikes me about him is like he is a complete authentic soul. Like there's nothing I don't know, like he's incapable of cliche, which is a rare thing. Like, you know, musicians or artists in general, like, I mean, you're constantly fighting the cliche, if you will, because anyone who has any ability of skill can sort of replicate anything, really. But it's like, what value does that truly have, you know? And there are people like Ry, or like modern day, you know, like people like Nels Cline or Julian Lage or Bill Frisell, or, you know, that like they're connected to the source, to the spiritual source of just letting something come out that will never be in danger of being inauthentic, you know. And it's an intent thing, I think, and it's also it's magic. And if there was a way to completely, you know, sort of unpack it all, then everyone would do it, you know. There's magic involved in it though. But I do think intent is a big part of it.
Can you speak more about that? What do you mean?
Well, I think that like if you know when you are thinking, when you're playing. You're aware of it. Like you're aware of like, what are you thinking about? You know, like what are you thinking about? Fear? Are you thinking about how people are perceiving you? Are you thinking about what the musicians that you're playing with are thinking of your contribution? Are you thinking about, like, you're aware of those things, right? And so awareness is a big thing, because you have to be aware to be self-aware. And then I think it's about the practice of trying to be at a place of openness and of non sort of self-editing, or being or you know, letting fear dictate what it is that's coming out of you. Because oftentimes the cliches or the things that are inauthentic are, I believe, like you trying to edit what is coming out of you to get a reaction that you think you want. And I think that if you can just breathe and be, one, you're going to open up your ability to let stuff come out of you that might never come again, because it's beyond, because it's the magic part. You're allowing spirit to like speak through you, but you're also then allowing yourself to truly kind of enjoy the moment, you know. But it's tough, you know. I mean, this is like a moment to moment.
Yeah, it's a Zen thing.
Yeah, you know. And I think that the truly great, you know, like if you listen to, there's beautiful long interviews of like Wayne Shorter or Charles Lloyd or Bill Frisell was fun to listen to talk, you know, like, you know, where they talk a lot about what we're talking about here, you know. Because the thinking equivalent when you're trying to commune, when you're trying to improvise freely, is really, really a hard thing. And that's why the truly great are the truly great, you know. And it's something to aspire to. Like, it's not something that it's something I aspire to. It's not, I don't think it's ever attainable. Like, it's maybe attainable in moments, you know.
Are there tools that you use, not to mechanize this, but like,
Sure.
Are there tools that you use if you're feeling like, I feel inauthentic in this moment, my playing isn't coming across? Stop playing.
Stop playing.
Just stop.
Stop and try and reset.
What does a reset mean to you?
Reset means stop and take a breath and try and allow yourself to truly react to something else that's happening musically. That's something that's the only answer that I have.
Yeah.
You know, or just try and embrace the moment, you know, because some nights or days, whatever, okay, so let me back up one step. So like, again, your ability to truly hear what it is that you're doing, whether in the moment or after the fact, and truly be able to listen to it as if it wasn't you, I really feel is impossible. I mean, I feel like you can get better about it over time, but you are so psychologically, there's so many things there's so much to unpack there that that in and of itself is really difficult, okay? Yeah. So like, one is like being able to be okay with whatever it is, okay? Just be like, well, my intent was correct and that's what happened and I accept it for what it is. Like, that's like one element, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next is the is what you're saying, like, you know, tools to use. And so I think that, you know, the stopping and trying to reset is the only thing that I really know in the moment. But otherwise, just the continual practice of surrender, because in the end, it is out of your control. Like, when you sit and practice and when you're working on stuff in a hotel room or whatever, it's like, that's you on your time, and that is something that you're able to, like, you are able to control the knowledge that you input. And you're also in charge of the music you listen to, like, I think is really important. I think it's incredibly important for people to push themselves to listen to stuff that they haven't listened to, or try and continually push their boundaries of like what they're exposed to. We have no excuse not to. It is the easiest it's ever been. We all have our phones and our laptops and our iPads, and we have access to every single thing that's ever been recorded or will be recorded at a moment's notice. It is the easiest it's ever been. There is no excuse that while you're sitting there scrolling through something that you couldn't be, even if it's a record from an artist you love, but it's a record you're not familiar with. It's like musicians, just like a writer has to, it's like Rodney Crowell made fun of me when I first moved here because I went over to his house and he said, play me something that you've written, and I played him something that I wrote, and it wasn't that good. And he said, JD, do you read? I said, no, not really. And he's like, well, if you want to be a writer, you think you should probably read, don't you? And he was right.
Yeah.
And so like he like recommended several books he loved, and like I read those books, and now like to this day, like I'm always reading 3 or 4 books at a time. Like, and it's not necessarily because of that. He just spurred. I just never thought about it. Like I didn't grow up being a literary person, you know. But music is the same way. That it's like, you know, if you think you're a musician, like, or think of yourself as a musician, you should listen to music. You should be constantly trying to find stimuli, you know.
Well, I definitely, when we get to the end of this, I want to get some music recommendations.
Oh, I'd love to. It's my favorite thing to talk
and
about.
maybe some book recommendations as well.
I would love to. Again, big
Great.
time.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing. I want to ask you about the relationship between thinking and being in the moment and preparation and practice, and kind of how you balance surrender and structure, and how you relate to that in your own playing and your own development as a musician.
Okay.
It's an open-ended question, but maybe you get the broad strokes that I'm getting at. Like, how do you balance rigid structure with also just being open to?
Well, rigid structure, like a song, it depends on the project, you know. So it's like some projects are not as open to as much color as others. So it's really dependent upon, like, you know, for me it's, you know, whose record am I playing on, or what artist am I playing with, or what is the context, you know, all that stuff. So because you know, there are some situations where where it's completely free, like in free jazz situations I find myself in. There's nothing from noise to guttural, primal, you know, whatever, like where it's all apparent. But it's like if I'm playing with, you know, if I'm working on Bruce Springsteen's thing or something, it's not appropriate, you know. Or if I'm like working with Chris Isaac or something, it's not appropriate. Yeah. So it's the rigidness comes from what is appropriate for the scenario we're in, and then it's just about trying to trying things and seeing, you know, not being afraid to try things, because if something occurs to you that could make something better, it can open up a whole new thing, you know, a whole new wellspring of inspiration for the person you're working with or the person that you're working for. Not to be afraid, but also at the same time, don't have your ego connected to whether it works or not. Don't be tied to the outcome of it, okay? Your job as a musician is to try and make things as good as they can be. Yeah. And so, like, don't be afraid, but also don't, like, it's not about you winning. Like, it's not a competitive sport, you know, like it's you know, it's all, you know, it's all open to interpretation. So I don't know, that's what I'm inclined to say about all that.
Yeah. What's your relationship to practice these days?
Well, it's multifaceted. I think that listening to music is practice. So like I listen to music constantly. It's always on. Like in my hotel room when I'm traveling, like it's like there's always music on. It's usually jazz. It's usually instrumental music or classical music.
Do you listen for anything in particular when you listen?
No, it's just enjoyment. And for what I'm talking, like, oh, I don't know this record, or I don't know this artist, or just pure enjoyment, like I feel like listening to this or something. But that's the first thing. Second of all is the dexterity of keeping my muscles in shape, because like one is like keeping your hand strength where we're just bending to pitch and holding a note and having your hand not waver at all. Like that's one element. It's very simple. And then with slide, keeping my sort of pitch center right. All this microtonal stuff that I do, if I don't do that regularly, the accuracy starts slipping. So it's like that's something I just need to be mindful of every day.
Are you thinking about microtones when you're playing slide?
I'm not necessarily thinking about it, but it's like just as it's happening, being aware of like, am I ducking into a note, or am I adding tension by purposely going a little slower, or if I'm doing these long jumps where I'm doing like very long linear, which is me literally just trying to keep my pitch where I'm doing like half step things to keep my ears working, you know? Because obviously I'm not doing that all night, you know, but and working on my vibrato, keeping my vibrato strong.
Do you do a lot of transcription these days?
None. Absolutely none.
That's interesting.
Absolutely none.
Did you ever go through a season where you
all ear?
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily writing things down, but learning solos. Like
no. If there's a phrase that I hear somebody do, there might be a phrase where I hear it and I go, "That's cool."
Yeah.
And I'll learn.
You go lift the phrase.
But I won't. No, because again, I just feel like learning things too verbatim can box you in or at least me.
Yeah.
Not everybody's different.
Yeah.
But I don't like. For me, it's about trying to grab some little thing that caught me, that I was like, that's really cool, and I want that.
Yeah.
And then the last element of practice is trying to learn something. Like if I'm sitting down to learn something specific that I didn't know before, which generally these days tends to be like sort of harmonic chordal knowledge. Using like fragmented harmony. That's something that I'm really into. That's something that like Frizzell is really obviously great at, and our friend Adam Levy, who we're talking about. That tends to be, so that's like, you know. Are
you following any sort of process with that, or just listening or exploring on your own?
No, it's just whatever is hitting me that specific day, you know, or that week.
Yeah.
You know, there might be a, you know, I mean, there are weeks where, you know, I went through a phase because I was going back and forth to New York to work on this Springsteen thing for months and months and months. And so there were some trips where I just brought my D18 with me and worked on bluegrass stuff, because it was really good for hand strength, but it's also really good for sort of like precision. That it's like, you know, I was like, oh, I'll be in New York for 10 days, and it's like I will do fiddle tunes and stuff every day before I go to set. And then I come home and go to a session and play electric for the first time, and it's like there is no effort whatsoever. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's like, because I've been lifting weights.
Yeah.
You know, musically.
Yeah.
So it can be any number of things, you know.
Yeah.
It's just whatever strikes me.
But you are learning like some source material and some tunes and stuff like that, and lifting little solos and things like this. That's super interesting.
Sure.
Really cool. So, you know, from here, where did you go? Obviously, we've just went through looking at Ralph Mooney, and then we talked about Ry Cooder. Were there more influences that kind of inspired your playing from there? Or was that the pantheon?
I mean, for slide guitar, that's kind of like, that's it. Because then now it's like, I don't even really think so much in terms of specific influence. I just approach it with the sensibility that I've sort of come across, which is this sort of hybrid of all those things and what I've shown you, like just, there's a lot of sort of the single string, multiple things on single string thing that I like sort of stumbled upon, which is sort of something I do.
Yeah. Wait,
and
break that down.
Like if I'm playing an E and I'm doing like a thing on one string, like multiple things on one string, which has become like a thing that I do a lot.
Yeah.
And there's, you mentioned like Indian classical music, and like I've sort of avoided that because of Derek Trux's connection to it, because that's very much something that like he has internalized. However, like through some modern bands like Entron de la Mire, which is I'm a big fan of, and also I love Mark Spear and Krungben, the sort of African and Thai. Sort of microtonal,
flat two type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And
so like modal mixture.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing. I'm doing a bad job of it because I'm nervous, but
You sounded great. It's also 2 degrees in this room, so.
Well, sorry, but there are no excuses.
That's true.
But my point being is like there's a lot of that I really enjoy, and particularly like capoing to high registers. With now I'm a capo, but like that I really like, and so there's those elements that have been newer, I guess. You know, in the bag of things that I think are cool. Otherwise, just trying to not be pointed. I always use the term like not be pointed in a specific direction, like just trying to be open. And that goes to like the gear I'm using, that goes to my intent. It's just like not having a modus operandi, like just letting something happen.
Well, I'm curious. Well, you just opened 2 threads that I'm curious about. One is how do you get a good tone? I noticed like for you, you've got lighter gauge strings than most slide players. Usually when I see slide players, 1, they're playing in open tuning. 2, they've usually got the action super high. And 3, they're usually using like extremely heavy gauge strings, like baritone strings in some cases. You don't do any of those things. Why?
It's just not my my preference. You know, I like being able to switch between regular guitar and playing slide. I do have fairly high action. Everybody makes fun of my guitars because but it's not necessarily because of slide. My action is high because I really like getting under the note, is what I call it, but it's just what's comfortable. I've never felt really comfortable with low action. I also think it sounds better, especially like acoustic instrument, like Brian Sutton, the great Brian Sutton. Like you pick his guitars up, and they sound great, and they're really hard to play, but it's
kick.
But they emit, like the string is, which I don't know. I guess like the string is able to vibrate more because it's not slapping against the fretboard or a fret or something. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. Back off, Matt.
Where's your science degree?
Ghostbusters reference. Cats and dogs.
We got a lot of retro references here.
But I like Princeton's. I have used big amps in the past. I got that out of my system long ago. For the last several years, my buddy Wayne Jones, Headstrong Amps, he makes this Princeton with a 12 called a Little King. I've used that for years now. And
what's the signal chain? What's like on a usual
pedals, couple pedals. I usually a delay of some sort, which I'll use somewhat. I really like the Benson delay. I think that's really good. And then a fuzz of some sort, which is usually my buddy Aaron up in Canada, Dominion. He makes amazing fuzzes, and so I have a couple things that he's made. And then a boost of some sort, which can either be, I like the Kingsley Minstrel lately. I got hip to that, which is sort of esoteric, which I like. And then I also like the Mythos Extra Hot, which is a pedal that he only makes for Carter Vintage here. I really like that. That's really good. But that I only use for like low gain slide, like just giving it a little bit more. But that's about it. I mean, I'm not a pedal heavy. I like reverb and tremolo in the amp, you know.
Yeah.
And guitar wise, I usually like Telecasters or whatever. I've gotten into Novos lately with Dennis Fano, and I love this guitar a lot. And,
yeah. What's got you switched onto this guitar over a Tele?
I don't know exactly, because I went and it's like, this one felt particularly great, and we've messed with the pickup some. This is a gold foil, and that's a P90, and then this can go in and out of phase.
Oh, that's cool.
That's out of phase, and that's in phase. I like being out of phase.
For folks who maybe haven't experimented with pickups out of phase, what does that do specifically to the sound?
It just makes it funkier sounding. So, like, you know, so. It's like throatier sounding.
Yeah,
as
but
opposed to,
oh yeah,
that's like pretty
very different. Yeah,
but also for like rhythm, for rhythm playing.
This is both pickups.
This is out of phase.
It's out of phase. Oh yeah, it's super nasally.
Very nasally, as opposed to.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's something that
You don't see that a lot on guitars. You had to mod it specifically.
Yeah,
for
no, it's just something that I've always I like out of phase sounds. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, what has initially driven me into digging this in particular is, again, like, it doesn't point me in a specific direction. Like, it's allowing me to do all the things I would normally do. It's got a beautiful bell, round tone.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't know, like, it's open palette to me. Like, it doesn't sound like a specific artist or something. I don't know. It's inspiring. I dig it.
Yeah, it's a super cool guitar. Bridge is wild on it too.
Yeah, it's the new Mastery, which Dennis Fano helped design. I guess this is like making it so the fulcrum point is when it's in playing position, it's as if the bar was like there, where it's like more perpendicular for it to be smooth. So it, like, yes, it looks aesthetically like it's trying to look nuts, but it's actually
kind of Harry Potter vibe to it.
Yeah, it's actually an ergonomic thing, which
so cool.
I dig.
Yeah.
And also, like, this thing, like, it rings for a long time, and most offset guitars, because of the strings back here and the string length up here, they tend to choke. And this doesn't, and apparently it's because of how he has made the neck pocket. Because I asked him specifically, I was like, well, the bridge has to be in the spot that it's in for it to be in tune.
Yep.
Like, it can't. And he's like, well, that's correct. And I'm like, and you have a decent break angle, but not an extreme break angle behind the bridge. And he's like, well, the neck pocket isn't as deep, so that there is no neck angle. So it's like perfectly straight to here, and then a little bit of it. And I was like,
oh, that's a wild mechanic.
So like, but he was like, oh wow, that's funny that you. But like, I do, like, I notice.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Super cool. You clearly have a wide understanding of the neck of the instrument and the mechanics of music. What was your path to doing that? And at what age, like what season in your life did you kind of dig deep on understanding the fretboard and understanding harmony?
That's a really great question, but it's a long one. I don't know. it's an accumulation over 35 years.
Did you have a good teacher that, or?
I've had many good teachers, like not necessarily teachers, but like, because I started so young and up until recently have always been the kid. It's weird now to have people that are 20 and I'm not the child anymore. It's a strange feeling, because I've been the kid since I was 7 years old, and so it's weird to like have people ask me questions, and it's like, what? I'm still learning myself. So yeah, it's just, I've had a lot of mentors, a lot of great musicians and producers and engineers and people in the movie business and actors and all kinds of people that like have been in my life. I have my wife doesn't make, because my wife and I have been together 18 years, and so like we've been through a lot of the journey together, and she comments that like my ability to like collect friends is amazing because she doesn't find it as easy. And I have like lots and lots of people that like are good friends that like we really know each other, and that takes a lot of effort. That's just like part of my personality, is like driving in the car and checking in on such and such who I haven't talked to in 4 months and that kind of thing. Like I'm good that way. But yeah, it's just a lot of just taking little bits from every single opportunity possible.
Yeah.
And so whether it's instruments or knowledge of, I love the collection of data. And I'm very much a tinkerer, like my grandfather. My grandfather was an auto mechanic his whole life, and he was Grandpa Tink. That's what we called him. And I very much am like him in that regard. I like understanding how things work. I like understanding. It's like if I like a record, it's like I want to know who produced it. I want to know who mixed it. I want to know how they recorded it. I want to know what instruments they used. I want to know what studio it was done at. And then it's like I want to know everything about that studio. I want to know everything about, like it's just my natural nature of personality.
Yeah. What's the latest rabbit hole that you're going down right now?
Oh man, there's always several. Right now I'm always sucked into anything UFO related, and so I was in Jersey working on the Springsteen movie when all the Jersey Lights things happened. So I've been very, not necessarily intrigued. That's more entertainment for me, but like I'm very that's something that's always omnipresent. And
what's the verdict?
I don't have a verdict. I think that I think that's our military experimenting with stuff.
Yeah,
I think is what that is, which is not the sexy answer. And also I was on a music cruise last month with many people. It's Delbert McClinton's cruise that I do every year, and Los Lobos were there. My friend Jimmy Vaughn and a bunch of other people were there, and I ended up hanging out a bunch with Caesar from Los Lobos and David Hidalgo some too. And I've gone down a huge rabbit hole of not necessarily their material, but both Caesar and David have contributed to so many eclectic, amazing records quietly over the last 40 plus years, more than most would realize. And I've been having a really good time, because I asked David too, but I asked Caesar in particular. I was like, I know Vera Cruz, but like, I don't know a lot about what you know tons of, which is your special knowledge of like Tejano music, Mexican music, Central American music. I was like, tell me what to listen to, and so he told me a bunch of stuff to listen to. So I've been.
Do you remember any of the stuff that he?
I don't know, because I don't want to speak at all, because I'm just barely getting into it, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But like I asked him a bunch, and he saved a bunch of stuff on my phone, so I've been slowly going through it.
Cool. I'll get that list and put it in the description of the YouTube video.
That's been fun. And then I'm trying to think of what else. I'm really the Kennedy assassination is always not far from my peripheral, and so
we're gonna know soon. Allegedly.
I think we already know. I think it's just it's just too dark to
Yeah.
fully, like, I'm really intrigued, but then I get really depressed.
Yeah.
Because it's just so disturbing.
Yeah.
But I'm always into that, and there's an author named Jim Diogenio who's written several great books, and I'm in the process of rereading 2 of his, and then he has a newer one that I'm reading as well. So I'm always into that.
Fiction, nonfiction?
I read nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's always historical based in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely read fiction.
What book has had the most influence on you in your adult life?
That's a really good question. Well, the easy answer would be Kerouac's On the Road, but I feel like that's just a cop-out. Because it is. It's just like, how many people are going to talk, it's like a music fan going, oh, I love Sgt. Pepper. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Go deeper, man.
Be more esoteric.
That's not
taste.
good. No,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. You know what? Even cowgirls get the blues. Tom Collins.
Why do you think it's had such an impact on you?
Because it was one of the first. It was one of the first, like, fiction books that I read that was, like, truly impressive to me. Or Tom Robbins, I'm sorry. Not Tom Collins. He was a country singer.
So writer on the side.
Yeah, right. No, I think because it was, like, one of the first where I read it on my own, because it was like, oh, this is a book people like and has, but it was like, wow, this was really good. Like, it left an impression, And I'm not a big fiction guy, so the fact that it, like, stands out at all, like, I was probably 17 or 18 when I read it, and then I read it again after Rodney told me to read, and he may have even mentioned it as well, if I'm remembering, but I can't remember. But yeah, I would say that probably, just because it showed me what good writing could be.
Yeah. Well, what are you listening to these days? What are the records at the top of the queue?
So Hidalgo in the early 90s made a record, a Latin Playboys record. The first one, he made 2 or 3, but the first one is a Desert Island record for me, and it's a bunch of demos he made, and then a very young Chad Blake, who has gone on to become now, like, the sound of modern great music, Alabama Shakes and lots of other stuff, as a mixer producer. But he was a young man, and he took all of David's demos and made them into this kaleidoscope of sound, and this is all way pre digital. So it's even more impressive that he did it all analog. So the first Latin Playboys record is an amazing record. My friend Joe McMahon turned me on to that a few years ago, and that's remained a big record. I like that record a lot. I like St. Vincent's new record. I think that's a really great record. I like Brittany Howard's new record, or last record, I should say. I think that's a brilliant record. I like Julian Lodge's last record was truly astounding. The way that he mixed his acoustic elements with the electric elements was, I think, brilliant, and one of the best captured things that he's done thus far.
We're just saying something.
I think, let's see, what else is there? I love listening to, actually, practice-wise, this is something that Adam Levy and I have in common. Nate Smith has made these pocket change records, which are just records of Nate, the great drummer, playing
great pockets,
amazing beats. I like listening to it just as a palate cleanser, because he's just such a beautiful, like, he's a beautiful musician, and it feels great, and it's like it doesn't need any ornamentation for me to enjoy it. But it's also a great practicing tool that it's like I will practice along to the pocket change records. So I love the Nate Smith pocket change records. I will often listen to usually Debussy or Chopin, like collections, just like on Spotify. Mostly piano concertos. Those are often, those are good palate cleansers for me. Adam Levy, his last record, Spry, is a record I love a lot. There's, oh gosh, what else is there? I know I'm forgetting stuff. That's a good smattering.
Yeah, it's great. That's a lot of threads that people can pull on.
Entron de la Mire, I love Entron de la Mire a lot. They only have 2 records that they've released, but it's like they're from Nigeria, and I listen to those records a lot. They're great records.
Did you say they're from Nigeria?
Yeah, they're from, and they tour here like once a year, and I've yet to be able to go see them, and it's.
Oh, they played here in Nashville three months ago
at Jack's place.
I was at that show. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of them. Like,
we brought a bunch of Sonora students to that show.
That's
they
fantastic.
Loved it. Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Mark Rebo, love Mark Rebo. The Ceramic Animal, is that the name of the record? Or the band that he has? Like that. Wilco, you know, I like their, you know, anything Tweety does is really good. And Nels' new record, which is about to come out, I love the couple of tracks that has been released. I think it's brilliant as usual.
Listen to it. Yeah. What's the Desert Island record?
Changes every day. The Latin Playboys record is definitely a Desert Island record.
Really?
That's a big influential record for me. I would probably put that. I'd probably put the White Album in there. My daughter is a huge Beatles fan, and it's been wonderful to watch my 6-year-old daughter, who her exposure to music is very schizophrenic, because it's like, I will listen to Stockhausen, which is basically noise, you know, like Brian Eno. Like, I will listen that to, you know, to Tiny Tim, you know, Tiptoe Through the Tulips, and everything in between. Like, it is very eclectic. So she has been exposed to anything you could think of. But it's like the fact that she's heard Beatle music and then just completely, like, it's amazing to me to see, you know, like that it's like that primordial, that like completely unprompted in a sea of all this other music that she just beelines right to this. And like, she like Revolver is her favorite. For a whole year last year, she wanted to listen to every song the Beatles had ever put out in chronological order, like to and from school.
Wow, that's cool.
So it took us a couple months.
Cool daughter.
But like, we listened to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because she like decided that like Revolver was her favorite, and she also really likes Let It Be, which is interesting. And in doing so, I found that actually I really like the White Album. I like the variety of the eclecticism of the White Album. And so yeah, I'd put the White Album in there. So yeah, Latin Playboys, the White Album. I'd probably put a Dylan record in there. I'd probably put Freewheelin' or something like that.
Just for the lyricism, or
and also
raw
just
musicality,
something different. I'd probably put Voodoo in there for several reasons, but D'Angelo is just, that record again was
wild,
a complete in my brain.
Charlie Hunter and
absolutely, and Pino and Dilla and
just the whole thing.
Yeah, so we definitely put Voodoo in there. I'd probably put Sound and Color in there. I do think Sound and Color is probably the best artistic record of my lifetime. Other than like Voodoo, I think like Voodoo and Sound and Color have a lot in common. That they were both like that monumentally mainstream successful, but they are so dense artistically. And I don't know, maybe Electric Ladyland or something like that. To like it's for like 5.
Yeah, round it out.
It's a nice. There's not a jazz album in there though, so I don't know. Maybe throw in probably On the Corner, Miles Davis On the Corner. And that I think I could live with that.
Yeah, you'd be good with that. That's a good combo.
6. Yeah.
Well, I know you were saying that you try to remain open and not drive in any particular direction, but if you had to guess what the future of slide guitar, looks like for the world. You know, there are a few folks who are really carrying the torch. I would include you in that group.
Oh, thank you.
What do you see? What do you see as the future of slide guitar?
Well, I definitely think that, like, as inventions, like the whole palm pedal thing, which is still relative. I mean, it's been around for a couple decades now, but I feel like there will be some evolution of sort of like things that are invented. I think that I haven't messed with it yet myself, but I feel like there's B bender, G bender with slide things to be explored. That's certainly something that I probably see myself doing sooner rather than later. Just because I've thought to myself, like, why is this not, you know, that's something to mess around with, which is definitely getting more into pedal steel territory. But I think that there's probably going to be some offshoot of that. I think that there's probably always going to be some level of connection to this sort of, you know, what Derek Trucks is doing at a world-class level. You know, there will be a continuation of that, just sort of like he's a continuation of what Duane Allman was doing. I think with you know, brilliant players like my friend Joey Landreth and R.L. Posen, I feel like sort of the exploring lower tunings with dense, artistically used effect use and stuff like that. I think that's definitely, like, both of them have an offshoot of influence kind of taking it in that area. But who knows? You know, I think that, you know, even at like world-class great guitarists, like slide is such a difficult tool that I don't feel that, I feel like it will always be the smaller percentage, just because it is essentially like what I did. You take a good guitar player and then you have to, like, start completely over again. And so not everybody's going to do that or have the opportunity to do that. So I feel like it's always going to be somewhat of a niche thing, just because it is very difficult. So, but that being said, I mean, it's guitar has been so plowed conceptually for you know, almost 100 years now. You know, that, you know, slide guitar in particular, you're looking at, you know, sort of the Hawaiian phase of the 30s-ish, 40s, you know, to today. You know, you can list on 3 or 4 hands, like, the sort of really seminal, and so there's a lot to be explored there for myself or anyone, you know. So dig in.
What advice would you have for someone who is considering, you know, getting into slide more seriously? How do they get into it?
Just don't quit. Just persevere through how difficult it is.
What's the entry point that you would recommend?
Like I said, like, start middle of the fretboard. Start middle of the fretboard and then work your way out. Try and get a note to sound cleanly without vibrato first. Then start to add some vibrato, which inevitably is going to be like that, and try and get that smooth, and then fan out from there. And just.
Do you recommend they start in standard?
No, I think
open tunings.
Whatever you want it to be, start there. If you want to be able to play in standard tuning, start in standard tuning. If you want it to be voiced more like Elmore James or Duane Allman or Derek Trucks or something, then play in open E. If you want it to be voiced more like Lowell George or Bonnie Raitt or Rod Cooder, then play in open G or open A. Make that decision. Same thing with, like, what people ask me all the time, like, what finger. It's like, just put wherever it feels natural. Like, if it feels
go for the thumb.
If it feels exactly, if it feels more natural on your pinky, then use it on your pinky. If it feels like, this is just what always felt more natural to me. So that. And here's all right. I will tell you this.
Glass, ceramic, or metal.
No, like, again, pick something that feels non-foreign to you. Okay. and stick with it until you're good. Because the nuance of what the actual, whether it's glass or brass or whatever, if you're changing this all the time, then you're always starting over. Like, pick something and learn on it, and then once you get good, then experiment and be like, oh, I think this sounds better, or oh, this feels better, or something. But it's like, in the beginning, just pick something and then be rigidly consistent with it, because otherwise it's like going into the gym and you're picking a different machine, or you're going from 20 pounds to 50 pounds to 200 pounds to, like, it's like, no, you like pick something and learn with it.
Why'd you pick glass?
I just think it sounds prettier in the end, and
warmer or something.
Yeah, I just, it feels better to me, and it's like sweeter sounding to me.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Do you do a lot of behind the slide playing?
None, because I don't. Like Sonny, you mentioned in a text, Sonny Landreth.
Yep. Like, and the Landreth brothers too.
Yeah, exactly. I admire it, and I just don't want to sound like them.
Yeah.
And I don't. And it doesn't. Like, I've done it like on my own time, like just as an experiment. But I don't like what I hear in my head is not that. So I just don't. Yeah. It's not. It's just a preference thing. But I mean, that's a whole nother thing that you can get into.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, it's just like, if I'm playing slide, I want it to just be pure slide. Yeah. And then I'll put it in my pocket and play fingerstyle.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah.
How can people stay in the loop on what you're working on? What are the projects that you're?
Oh, just Google JD Simo and it'll all come up. There's all the socials. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and try and be consistent on YouTube. I have a channel, and
I like it.
I grossly neglect it. I apologize about that.
That's a good hang though.
I appreciate
what do you call it? The
greasy time.
Greasy time. Yeah, that's good.
So, but yeah, I'll try and do better. But yeah, just Google my name; it'll all come up.
Yeah, great, awesome. Anything else you want to share with the folks watching?
Just thank you for having me. Honored to.
Well, we really appreciate you having taking out the time to come here on this cold Nashville day.
My pleasure.
And it was awesome. I learned a lot. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you, man.